I'll go through all these steps. The selection of the meat, you can make sausage out of anything, any kind of meat, including fish, which I've never done. And I've never done chicken either, but you can. Chicken, I'm not going to talk about it here because most of you aren't going to do chicken either. But if you want to, really the big difference with chicken is when you cook it, you have to cook it to a higher temperature, and we'll talk about. With all the sausages, the beef and pork and the stuff we're going to make, the temperature you want to hit is 155 degrees. Okay. With chicken, 170 degrees for any poultry. With pork and beef, 170 is a critical temperature, and we'll talk about that too. So there's a difference, and I guess the point that I want to make here is that you probably don't want to mix poultry in with your beef and pork, just because you have to. So you can do it. But for meat selection, you want about 70 to 80% lean, 20 to 30% fat. Beef chuck and pork butts, Boston butts, are in that ballpark as they come. If you're going to do venison or wild hog, you're going to need some fat. I brought scales. That's really the only way to do it, and some of the equipment that's kind of critical that you might need. Let me talk about equipment first. The scale. This is really the best home stuffer. This is a 15-pounder here. There's a 5-pounder there. 15-pounder depends how much you're going to make, I guess, but it's too big for me. But I bought a 15-pounder because it's got metal gears. All the 5-pounders have plastic gears, and you hear stories about them either breaking teeth off or where they're fastened to the shaft cracks or breaks. I don't know personally, so I got the big one with the metal gears.
We got lucky years ago and bought one from sausage makers. That's when they were importing them. They still had metal gears.
Yeah, and that's right. There was a
that thing forever.
Yeah. Sausage maker sells pretty good stuff, but they get paid for it too.
Yeah, I think
the grinders, the electric grinders that we have here are good. You can use your KitchenAid with a grinding attachment. It works for grinding. On a budget, this is the way to go. This is number 10. They come by numbers. There's an 8, 10, 22, 32. The number 10 is a good size for home sausage making. It's rated at 100 pounds per hour. Your results will vary. But the fact is that if you have this, you can grind with it, you can stuff with it. They come with stuffing tubes that I probably put away. But anyway, they come with stuffing tubes. You just take the grinding plate out here. There's a little triangular piece, spacer that fits in there. Put the stuffing tubes on, you run it back through, stuff it into your casings. Works good. Costs $25. That costs $200. I bought that one on I have a good story. That was $100 at Cabela's, and they had it on sale for I think $89.95. And I was at Cabela's getting something else with my wife, and they got busy, and the checkout lines got long, and a manager type comes up and gives me a $25 coupon because I had to wait in line. I'm gonna get a grinder. So that's how I got that grinder, and it's good, it works well. But again, if you're on a budget, that works. Here I have, this is called a 3-pound stuffer, and these are made to look pretty good in advertising. They also, by the way, this is Get Healthy Texas Day today, so it's appropriate that we're doing a sausage class. This is pretty good workout, both mentally and physically. It'll check both the stamina of both. And as a matter of fact, I think later we'll have a contest, and the loser will get this. Don't buy one of these. They require. I'm not a little guy, and it wears me out trying to press stuff through there. And about each, they're cast, so they're not machined. They're cast. They're not uniform, and about 20% of your meat will squeeze back past this piston. Just they're not good. Mixer, making batches. These are nice. I mean, you can mix in a bowl by hand, or use one of these. You could use the paddle attachment on your KitchenAid. Okay, but you have to be very careful in making sausage about keeping things cold. And so if you're using the paddle attachment on the KitchenAid, you got to go slow. Should maybe put the bowl in a bigger bowl with ice to keep it cold. We'll talk a little bit about that and why. You can read here what I have to say about things. Oh, make sure I missed. Watch the cutter head when you're grinding. If the meat and fat coming out, you should see the distinct red of the meat, the white of the fat, and so on. If it starts looking more uniform and it doesn't come out in your nice little cylindrical fashion, take it apart and clean the knife. The connective tissue tends to get wound up on the knife, and it causes some bad things. I'll talk about some of them later, but some of them right now. It generates heat for one thing, and heat is bad sausage, and you want that the fat particles to stay distinct and uniform as they come out. So watch that.
The worst thing is it squishes, and if you're in your kitchen, it gets over stuff that you don't notice, but the wife does.
Okay, seasonings. I have recipes in here, but the intent of this is when you leave here, you'll feel comfortable making your own recipes, modifying somebody else's recipes, or checking the validity of a recipe that you found, whether it's going to be a good one or not. And so along with that, with the seasonings, you want to get them prepared beforehand. You know what kind of sausage you're going to make. Before you start cutting and grinding, measure out your seasonings and get them ready. I have today. I have a scale here to measure, and I'm sure we have measuring devices to measure. I've got these plastic cups that you can put your seasonings in, and you have them ready to go. Same way with liquid ingredients, have them ready to go before you want ice water or whatever liquid is to be very cold. The seasoning, if you're trying something new, when you mix your batch up with your seasoning, you do it's called a Quenelle test. Make a small patty, put it in a skillet, fry it up, taste it, see what you think. Because you know, this is your last chance to change the seasoning. Binders, you want to have them up and ready to go too with your seasonings. We'll talk about that a little bit too. Seasonings, you can add liquid. I have, I don't know if I didn't bring them, but a little blender that I use. And quite often I'll put the liquid in the blender and all the seasonings in the blender and hit it, and you know they're well mixed. The salt stuff goes into solution and it'll mix into the sausage pretty well. The mixing is the next section, and that's the part where you need to pay attention. Secret of sausage making is in the binding of the proteins in the meat. There's several kinds of protein in meat, and one of them called actomycin is there'll be a test later. Is soluble in salt and water, and when you add your salt and you mix it, this actomycin will go into solution, and you can tell when you're mixing it that your mixture will get real sticky. And if we've all made meatloaf before, you probably noticed it and didn't know what it was, but that's what it is. But that protein going into solution binds, it'll not only bind the other proteins, but it binds the water and the fat. That's important. You've probably all had link sausages before that were greasy. Even picking them up, they're greasy on the outside of the skins. When you cooked them, they were kind of dry, not great texture, compared to the ones that get plump and have a nice snap when you bite into them. It happens here, mixing, okay, and doing the binding and its proteins. Now, you can augment that with other proteins, water-soluble proteins. They generally recommend soy, but this is rice protein. I have